ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Victor Morales, Gary Morrow, Martha Whitehead, and Jim Chapman.
You know, my first important job in Democratic politics was holding Ralph Yarborough's coat. You know, while he rolled up his sleeves, climbed on the campaign stump, and he held forth about the state of the world under a blazing Texas sun. Old Senator Yarborough, he'd rev up with those expressive gestures. He'd wade in against the Republicans and their billions and billions for defense, but not one red cent for a crust of bread for a child in need. Not a day goes by, my friends, that I don't appreciate the truth of some lesson he taught me those many years ago. And one of the lessons was that if you believe in what you're doing, no matter what people say, no matter what the odds are, well, if you keep at it, if you're right, sooner or later, people will see the light. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Today, all of Texas see the light. What am I talking about? I'm talking about carrying Texas for Bill Clinton. You know, for as long as anyone asked, I said President Clinton could carry Texas in 1996. And I've been saying all year, in Texas, we're in a horse race. Now, you know, people would say, mostly behind my back, you know, Gary has to say that. But here we are, into September, and the polls have finally caught up with the rest of us. You read it last week. The Texas poll says it's a toss-up in Texas. The Hard Hanks poll says it's even. Heck, did you read the Dallas Morning News? Even the Dallas Morning News says it's a dead heat, and everybody knows if it's in the Dallas Morning News, it's the truth. This presidential election is ours for the taking, my friends. And there's no mystery about how we got here. The president has done a great job for Texas. Unemployment is down. Jobs and consumer confidence are up. Texans are feeling good about Texas, good about themselves, and good about the prospects for the 21st century. And more importantly, they're feeling good about the president, whose leadership made it happen. And on top of that, the Texas Democratic Party is doing it right by itself and for Texans. Now, we're unified, we're fortified, and we're ready to roll in November. Now, the question is, now I'm willing to work for the next 40 days. Heck, after the last 23 months, that's easy. The question is, are you willing to work for the next 40 days? We're going to win this thing. Now, I'm happy and proud to welcome the President of the United States to the Lone Star State. You know, like the old Bob Wills song says, you just can't get enough of Texas. Oh, Mr. President, I've got good news for you. Texas just can't get enough of you. It's my pleasure to introduce an extraordinary, ordinary school teacher who's going to be the next United States Senator from Texas, Victor Morales.
Here I am, or rather, here you are, the firemen, the policemen, the construction workers, the social people. Here you are, an ordinary person, getting ready to win the U.S. Senate seat, proving 2 times now to the experts that it's not power and it's not big money, it's people that can win the race. And so, for myself, and I think for the president, it's not a question if we're going to win, but by how much. It's a fantastic feeling to come to East Texas, see so many different people standing there all together, all working together. And that's the way the Democrat Party is, isn't it? The true picture of America. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to take out someone that should have never been there, actually. To hopefully make that trip to Washington, D.C. to help Mr. Clinton 4 more years, try to help the people of Texas and the rest of the United States, and to prove that once again it's the Democratic Party that cares about every single person, rich, poor, old, young, black, white, brown, it doesn't matter. It's a real honor and privilege. And I know those kind of words are cliches, but I mean, I'm a school teacher. I was in the classroom last year, and here, the President of the United States has asked, and when I say me, I say you too, one of us to go along with him and to meet people across the state of Texas. And I am honored that the President feels that the teachers are important. And not only the teachers, but the working people, the people that make this country go. He has his priorities correct. And so now at this time I would like to take this few minutes to introduce a lady who was a great mayor of Longview, a lady who not only talked about improving government and saving us hard-working taxpayers some money, but did it. And that person is Miss Whitehead. Thank you.
Good morning, East Texans. Welcome to Gregg County, to our community, and to our village. All across this great state this week, newspaper headlines proclaimed the good news. The jobless rate in Texas is at its lowest level in 15 years. Now, I can't take any credit for the low unemployment numbers because, as you know, I abolished my own job and entered the ranks of the unemployed several weeks ago. The good news we're celebrating today is due to the terrific work of our president and his administration. Since taking office, President Clinton has lowered the deficit by more than 50%. That translates to a $15,000 a year savings for every Texas family in terms of the burden of the national debt. And hear this, more than 900,000 new jobs have been created in Texas due to the leadership of Bill Clinton. I'm really proud that our efforts to reinvent government and eliminate the Treasury is going to save Texas taxpayers $8 million a year. But Bill Clinton and Al Gore's national plan to reinvent government is saving American taxpayers $118 billion. Are we better off in Longview, Texas than we were 4 years ago? You bet. You bet we are. Since 1992, almost 1,400 direct jobs and 2,200 indirect jobs have been added here. There has been a total capital investment in our community of almost $800 million. Notable here has been the continuous expansions of Texas Eastman Company, the addition of the Neiman Marcus distribution facility, and the coming of the Southland newsprint factory. Like communities all across this nation, Longview, Texas is booming. Thanks to the efforts of Bill Clinton. You know, East Texans demand a lot from their elected leaders, don't we? East Texans can be fickle, but this president has done something that East Texans like. He has delivered. He promised us that our lives would be better and our economy improved, and he has kept his promise. Many of you out there, many of my good friends worked hard to help me eliminate my job. And I know that you're going to work even harder to help Bill Clinton keep his. Mr. President, we thank you for coming to East Texas. We want to help you and see that you carry Texas this time around. And remember, if you need any help, I'm still out of a job. My East Texas friends, join us on the bridge to the 21st century, and let's give a rousing East Texas welcome to the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. 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 Thank you very much. Thank you. Folks, I would have come all the way to Longview just to see the Rangerettes and hear the Ranger Band. Thank you very much. Thank you. I thank you for coming out on a little bit of an overcast day and keeping the rain away. I feel like the sun shines on us in Longview today, don't you? Thank you, Martha Whitehead, for being a great mayor, a great state treasurer, for keeping your campaign commitment and working yourself right out of a job. Somehow I think that people will think you're entitled to a lot more good jobs in the future. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, County Commissioner James Johnson, for being here. Thank you, Ann Richards, for your wonderful talk. I heard it in the back, didn't she? Thank you, Texas Democratic Party Chair and former Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy, Bill White. He did a great job for us in Washington, and he's doing a great job for the Democratic Party here in Texas. And thank you, Gary Morrow, my friend of many years, for standing up for us, sticking with us, and waiting around till we finally got to the point where we can win in the state of Texas because we've done a good job for the people of Texas. I also want to thank Max Sandlin for being here and for speaking earlier, and I want to ask you to send him to the United States Congress. We've got some great candidates in this part of Texas running for their first terms in Congress. Max Sandlin, Jim Turner, John Poland. I hope they will all win. I hope you will help them so they can help you build that bridge to the 21st century that we've been talking about. Thank you, Judge Frank Maloney, for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a little personal privilege here and ask your retiring Congressman, Jim Chapman, who served you well and worked hard just to come up here and say one word. This is the biggest crowd you'll see in Longview till he leaves office, and I want him to have a chance to say hello to you. Come on up here, Jim.
Thank you. Mr. President, this is a unique honor to have you here. It is great to be back in East Texas. And I want to tell you that with the help of our president, in the next 2 or 3 days, they're going to close down the 104th Congress. And when they do, because of our President of the United States, we're going to have more money for education. We're going to have an increased minimum wage. We are going to have working families with a chance to do something. We have stopped the Republican juggernaut, and based on what the Ethics Committee did yesterday, I don't know if you read the morning news or not, we're probably going to have Dick Gephardt as majority leader even sooner than we thought. Let me tell you, Mr. President, you're looking at some of the greatest Texans, the greatest Democrats, and some of the finest Americans in this great country of ours. Thank you for allowing me to be your representative. Thank you for allowing me these few words. And East Texans, let's put Texas in the win column for Bill Clinton on November the 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 years ago, I had a pretty tough time here. I ran for president against 2 guys from Texas. It hardly seemed fair to me. I'm sure I'd spent more time in Texas than anybody else who'd run for president recently. And you were very good to me. We got a good showing here. I've had an opportunity to come back to Texas many times in the last 4 years. And I want to thank all those who have been my friends and supporters through good times and bad. You know, we had some tough decisions to make when I became president, but think what this country was like 4 years ago. We had high unemployment, the slowest job growth since the Great Depression, growing inequality because working people's wages were stagnant, the crime rate was going up, the welfare rolls were going up, the country was becoming more divided, and people were becoming more skeptical, even cynical, about our politics. And I believed it was because we did not have a unifying vision to take us into the 21st century. And I have a simple, straightforward idea of what I want this country to look like in 4 years when we start a new century and a new millennium. In Longview, Texas, and every town like it all across America, I want the American dream to be alive and well for everybody who's willing to work for it, without regard to where they start out in life. I want this country to be the world's strongest force for peace and freedom and prosperity, because our peace and our freedom and our prosperity depends upon America's ability to lead and stand up for those things in the world. And I wanted us to be a country that's coming together, not being torn apart by our differences. And I believe we can all say we're a lot better off by that standard today than we were 4 years ago. We're on the right track to the 21st century. We've done it by trying to meet our challenges and protect our values with a simple little strategy: opportunity for all, responsibility from all, and an American community that treats everybody fairly and gives everybody a role to play. Now, you look at the results, and you think about the tough times in 1993 and 1994 when we were passing our economic plan. Mr. Morales' opponent said, if the president's plan passes, unemployment will go up, the deficit will go up, we'll have a terrible recession. That's what he said. Well, now we know. A trained economist, they say. 4 years later, we have 10.5 million new jobs, 900,000 here in Texas, the lowest unemployment rate in America in 7.5 years, the lowest unemployment rate here in 15 years. In every single year, a record number of new small businesses, the highest rate of home ownership in 15 years, 4.5 million new homeowners. And yesterday, in the annual report of the United States Census Bureau on how we're doing as a country in terms of our income, we got the following information. Last year, median, that's the people in the middle, direct middle, not the average, the people in the middle, median household income last year increased by almost $900 after inflation, the biggest increase in family income in 10 years. Family income, since that economic plan passed, has gone up over $1,600. And even more important, more of us who are working are sharing in it. We had the biggest decline in the inequality of incomes and the biggest decline in the number of working Americans living in poverty in 27 years, from one year to the next. We had the biggest decline in the number of children living in poverty in 20 years. We are on the right track, and we need to stay on that track to the 21st century. We have increased education opportunities from more children in Head Start to a better, lower-cost college loan program, to the AmeriCorps program to allow young people to work their way through college by serving in their communities. We're moving in the right direction. The crime rate has gone down for 4 years in a row because of those 100,000 police Ann Richards was talking about. And when they told all the hunters in East Texas that the president was trying to take their guns away when the Brady bill passed, it sounded pretty good at the time, and we took a terrible licking in a lot of places in 1994. You'd have thought I was going to knock on the doors myself and take people's guns away. Well, guess what? Now we know. Now we know. 2 hunting seasons have come and gone. It turns out that I was telling the truth. When we took the 19 assault weapons off the street, we protected 650 kinds of hunting weapons. So 2 years later, not a single hunter in Texas has lost a rifle, but 60,000 felons, fugitives, and stalkers could not get handguns because of the Brady bill. So the crime rate went down. The welfare rolls are down by nearly 2 million in America. Child support collections are up by almost 50%, nearly $4 billion a year more in child support collections. That's helping to move people off welfare and give families dignity and reinforce the responsibility of everyone to support their children. We are moving in the right direction. And you know, when I ran for president, and I liked what Martha said, you know, she literally reinvented government. She consolidated her job. I heard our friends in the other party, they always said the federal government is a terrible thing. It's nothing but waste. It would mess up a one-car parade. And they made a living. They owned the White House for decades, you know, just kicking the federal government around. They hated it so much, but they couldn't bear to be outside of it. It kind of tickled me. But they never did anything about it. They badmouthed it. They said how bad the government was. They said we Democrats were nothing but government lovers, and we would defend every program. Well, guess what? Now we know. Our administration reduced the size of the federal government by 250,000. It's the size it was now when John Kennedy was president. As a percentage of our workforce, it's the smallest it's been since Franklin Roosevelt first took the oath of office in 1933. That's what we did to reinvent this government. We're still serving you, but it is smaller. We have reduced the burden of federal regulations more. We have eliminated more unnecessary programs. We've given more authority back to state and local government. We've shared more authority with the private sector than they ever did when they had the White House. The only difference is we're doing it because we think it will help to create the conditions and give you the tools to make the most of your own lives. So we still believe we ought to balance the budget, but we don't believe we ought to wreck the Medicare program or the Medicaid program or undermine education or the environment. That's the difference. Folks, you know, I spent the last 12 years of my life before I moved to Washington a lot closer to Longview than to Washington. And I was in Washington at a dinner last night, and Senator Dodd, the chairman of our party, said that he sort of felt sorry for me when I showed up. I'd never been in the House. I'd never been in the Senate. I'd never served in anybody's administration. I'd just been a governor. I didn't understand how Washington works, that it was more about talk than action. You need some help? Where's my doctor? I've got my medical team. We got somebody here who fainted. Go out. We're coming. We'll bring you right there. Just somebody hold your hand up and we'll find them. They'll be right there. Here they are. There's nothing else we can do. Y'all just let's go on with the show here. They're going to take good care of them. Now, listen. When we came there, the thing that bothered me about Washington was that there was a lot of talk and very little action. Everybody spent all their time trying to get their 30 seconds on the evening news, seeing who they could blame for America's problems. And I said, we are going to change the way Washington works. We're going to stop asking who's to blame and start asking what are we going to do to get this country moving again and help people. So I tell you today, we are better off than we were 4 years ago, but we got a lot to do, and we're going to be better off still. And I came here to ask the people of Longview and East Texas and this great state to help and join in building that bridge to the 21st century. Now you know this approach is right. We are better off than we were 4 years ago. We don't need a U-turn. We need to bear down and go right on into that future, and I want to ask you to help us. I want you to help me balance that federal budget. We've already taken the deficit down 4 years in a row for the first time since before the Civil War. They talked about it. We did something about it. But we've got to balance the budget in a way that is fair to everybody. We can protect education and the environment and research and technology. We can protect Medicare and Medicaid. And we can afford a targeted tax cut tied to child rearing and education. I am very proud of the fact that on October the 1st, 10 million Americans will get an increase in their minimum wage. You may not know there's also in that bill tax cuts to help small businesses if they invest more, tax cuts to help small businesses if self-employed people have to buy their own health insurance policy, and there's also a $5,000 tax credit for any family that will adopt a child. That's pro-family, pro-work, and pro-business. What I want to see us do now is to give the American people tax credits for child rearing. I want to see tax cuts for education. I want to see tax cuts for home buying. I want to see tax cuts for medical care. And I want to explain in a minute how all that works, but the main thing I want to say to you is we can afford the right kind of tax cut. But we should not have a tax cut that is a big across-the-board tax cut that goes to people like me who don't need it, and that will increase the deficit again. Now, every time I get on a plane and leave Washington, they say, now, Mr. President, the economy's going well now. Don't go down to some place like Longview and talk about the deficit. It bores people to death. They don't want to hear about it, and nobody cares about it except when times are tough. Well, let me tell you what it means. You go home tonight and you think about this. Because we cut the deficit by 60%, we're not borrowing as much money. That leaves more for you. That means interest rates are lower. Now, last year, our Republican friends put out a report that I agree with. I agreed with them last year, and I wish they hadn't changed their position. Last year, they said, if we get off of this plan to balance the budget, interest rates will go up by 2%. Now, when you go home tonight, you think about what that would mean. If your car payment, your credit card payment, and your house payment went up by 2%, that'd take your tax cut away right quick, wouldn't it? Think what it would mean even worse if all the little businesses up and down this street here and every other business in this county had to pay 2% more for a business loan. Then small business would have a harder time expanding and growing and hiring new people. So I say, yes, cut taxes, but pay for every dime of it and still balance the budget. That's my plan. Help people educate their kids, help people build their families, but do it right. The second thing I want to say is, we've got to build a bridge to the 21st century where every single person has a chance to get a world-class education. And I could keep you here till tomorrow at this time talking about the schools and education. Let me just tell you two of the things I want to do. Number one, I want to see every classroom in this country and every library and every school in America hooked up not only with computers, but hooked up to the information superhighway, to the internet, to the World Wide Web. And let me say what that means. Let me tell you what that means. If you're like me and you're sort of out of the computer generation and it gives you a headache to think about all this, here's what it means in simple terms. If we can hook up every classroom in Longview to the World Wide Web, to the internet, to all these other networks of information, and we did that in New York City, and we did that in the remotest place in North Dakota, for the first time in history, the kids in the poorest school districts, the kids in the most remote school districts would have access to the same information at the same level of quality in the same time as the kids in the richest public and private schools in America. It has never happened before. We could revolutionize education, and we ought to do it. The second thing we ought to do is to make a college education available to every single person who needs it of any age. And here's my plan to do that in 3 little ideas. Number 1, let more families save in an IRA, an individual retirement account for their retirement, but let them withdraw from it tax-free if they're using it to pay for a college education, a health emergency, to buy a first home. Number 2, make a community college education as universal in America in 4 years as a high school diploma is today. Make 2 years of education as universal by giving families a tax credit, dollar for dollar off their tax bill for the cost of tuition at the typical community college in America today. Number 3, give the families of this country a $10,000 deduction for the cost of any college tuition, any vocational tuition, up to $10,000 a year, every year the kids are in college or the parents are in college. We ought to make this available to America, and we can pay for it and balance the budget. Will you help me build that bridge to the 21st century? I want to build a bridge to the 21st century where the crime rate goes down for 4 more years. We take it down 8 years in a row, it might be low enough for us to stand it. And I have some specific ideas. First of all, we got to finish the job of putting those 100,000 police on the street for reasons that absolutely amaze me. This Congress is still trying to stop us from putting police on the street, even though it is lowering the crime rate and preventing crime and helping kids to stay out of trouble. Number 2, we ought to do more drug testing of people who are out on parole. 60% of the cocaine and heroin consumed in the United States today is consumed by people who are already in the criminal justice system in some way. You should not be on parole if you go back to drugs. That will make us a safer country. Number 3, we ought to fully fund our Safe and Drug-Free Schools Act. We ought to have a DARE officer in every grade school classroom that needs it in America out there helping these kids to stay off drugs and stay out of trouble. For reasons I do not understand, this Congress has tried to cut that program in half. I want to do more. We have got to convince our young people not to get in trouble in the first place. We're not going to jail our way out of their problems. We've got to keep them on a good path to the future. We've got to keep them on that bridge to the 21st century, and we need to do what we can to help you folks, the parents, the religious leaders, and the people in law enforcement who are willing to go into these schools and help our kids. We need to support them in every way we can. We've got a program to do it, and I want to finish that job, and I want you to help me build that bridge to the 21st century. I want to build a bridge to the 21st century where we have stronger families. And what's the biggest problem I hear from families all over this country? Everywhere I go, they say, we're having trouble doing our job as parents and doing our jobs. We're working harder than ever before, but our kids need us more than ever before. That's why I'm proud that the first bill I signed was the family leave law. It's given 12 million families, 12 million of them, the chance to take a little time off from work if they have a baby born or a sick child or a sick parent without losing their jobs, and we're a better country because of that. It's been good for our economy. I believe we ought to expand it and say you can get a little time off from work to go to a parent-teacher conference or a regular doctor appointment with your child too. We do not weaken America's economy when we make it possible for people to do right by their children. We weaken America's economy when there are millions of workers at work all over America worried sick about their kids while they're trying to do their job. I want to create a country where everybody who wants to work can work, where everybody has to work who can work, but where every worker can be a good parent, because that's our first and most important job. That is what I'm trying to do, and I want you to help me build that bridge to the 21st century. And finally, let me say that I believe almost every American now understands that we can't build a bridge to the 21st century unless we find a way to improve our environment as we grow our economy. I'm really proud of the fact that we passed a safe drinking water law. We passed a Pesticide Protection Act supported by all the farm groups and all the consumer groups to improve the quality of our food, that we are working hard to clean up toxic waste dumps, and we cleaned up more in 3 years than our predecessors did in 12. But I am concerned about the continuing environmental challenges we have, and I want to leave you with just one. As you look at all these kids in the audience today, there are still 10 million American children, 10 million American children living within 4 miles of a toxic waste site. If you will give us 4 more years, we'll clean up the 500 worst sites so we can say America's children are growing up next to parks, not poison, and that's a part of our bridge to the 21st century. Now, folks, you have a clear choice in 39 days. Are we going to build a bridge to the past or a bridge to the future? Do we really think it's better to say you're on your own? Or was my wonderful wife right? It does take a village like Longview to raise our kids and build our businesses and build our future. Are we going to build a bridge that's big enough and broad enough and strong enough for us to all walk across, and that will be strong enough for our children and grandchildren to walk across? You know, I want to ask every one of you to go out and talk to the people you know who aren't here today. Doesn't matter what their party is, and just ask them this. Say, you know, the century only changes once every 100 years. And this country is changing dramatically. The way we work, the way we live, the way we relate to the rest of the world, it is changing. And ask people, what do you want America to look like when we go into that new century? What do you want America to look like when our children are our age? In 100 years, what do you want people to say that we did at this moment in time with our responsibility? If what we do is to create opportunity for everybody who's willing to work for it, if we prove that unlike all these other countries that are torn apart by their differences, we can be a country of different races, different religions, different points of view, bound together by our fidelity to the American system and American values, that we can lead the world. That's what I want the story to be. If those are the questions people ask before the election in November, 39 days from now, I believe I know what the answers will be. You go out and reach out to other citizens so that we can go forward and build that bridge to the 21st century. Thank you, and God bless you all.